Hello and welcome to the Snickerdoodle Knits YouTube channel. I am Jessica, the knitter and designer behind Snickerdoodle Knits. In this video tutorial, we are going to be talking about how to add fringe to your project. This creates a fun element that can really add some character to your projects. So what you'll need for this is your yarn, some scissors, and a measuring tape if you care just how long your pieces are. So here we have a shawl. This is my Wear the Buffalo Roam shawl, and I'm just going to be adding fringe along the entirety of the bottom edge. So to start with, I've gone ahead and cut out a few pieces of fringe, but what you will do is, if your pattern tells you how long you need to do the fringe, you'll quadruple that amount because we'll be folding our yarn into quarters. So for this pattern, I have recommended a 4-inch long fringe. So the fringe itself will extend from the shawl for 4 inches. But to get that 4 inches, I cut my yarn 16 inches long because I'll show this in more detail, but we're going to fold it in half and then fold it in half again, so then it's in quarters. So we want this whole length here to be 4 inches. So I've gone ahead and cut out some pieces of yarn here, as you can see. But what I did, if you don't have a specific, if your pattern doesn't tell you specifically how long your fringe should be, you can do a little bit of testing. So that's why I have a couple different lengths here. I had gone ahead and tested a few different lengths to decide what I wanted. So I had just done a few and then kind of taken a look at how long that would be, and I decided I liked the longer length better. So you can trial and error a little bit there to decide how long you want your fringe. So to create your fringe, first of all, you need to start with your yarn, and then you'll just measure out the length that you need. So like I mentioned, this fringe will be 4 inches long. So I want to cut out 16-inch pieces. So to do that, I'll lay out my yarn here. And I'll measure 16 inches. So I just cut right here. And you can do this, you can lay it out individually and cut each one. But what I like to do, this isn't maybe the most accurate way, but it's a lot quicker. I like to go ahead, measure that out. So I have my 16 inches. And then I just continue to fold the yarn over so that I can create multiple pieces at the same time. Get my measuring tape out of here. So they'll all be right about 16 inches long. Just continue to do that for how many ever pieces you need. And if you don't know how many pieces you need, just go ahead and do quite a few, and you can always measure out more later. So I'll go ahead and do quite a few of these here, and I'll be back in just a moment. Alright, so this isn't nearly enough for my whole project, but I've gone ahead and just measured out, I don't know, like 10, 15 pieces. So what I'll do, go ahead and lay all of those flat here, and you'll have loops on each end, since we just kept wrapping that. So what I'll do, this is the yarn connecting to my yarn ball, so I'll cut that first here, and then just grab, if I hadn't set this down, it would have been easier. Usually I kind of keep my finger in the loops while I'm in one of the loops while I'm wrapping it, so I don't drop it. But here you can pick up one end and just kind of grab those ends of the loops. And I'll go ahead and demonstrate this once more too. Grab those ends, kind of try to pull it straight. All right, so these are our ends that are creating loops. And we'll just pull that straight and cut those. So now I just do the same thing on the other end. Find all of our loops. Straight up. There you go. Okay. So now we have individual pieces of approximately 16-inch long yarn. All right, I'll go ahead and show that once more, just in case you missed any part of that. So we'll grab the end of our yarn, and for some reason it seems like the ends of the yarn is always more crinkly, because I pull from the outside, so the center is more crinkly. But that's not a big issue. It'll flatten out over time. So then again, I measure out 16 inches. Put my finger right here. And then I will overlap that. So I have another 16-inch piece. I'll do that again. And just continue. This time I won't do quite as many loops. Alright, so then I can just cut the yarn at the end. And here, since I haven't set it down, my loops are nicely together. So just pull the scissors to the end, and cut it. And then I'll pick up the other end here and do the same thing. Just pull the scissors so that your yarn is taut there, and cut it. And there we have about 6 more pieces. All right, so what we'll do now that I wadded these up and they're not flat, now I'll go ahead and attach those. So I usually just use my fingers. You can use like a little crochet hook or a needle to help you too. And the way we're going to attach it is we're actually going to attach it to the wrong side of the fabric. So this is the right side of the fabric that I want to see when I'm done, when I'm wearing the object. So I'm going to flip the shawl over to the wrong side. And then I like to start in the very center so that I know that I have one piece of fringe hanging from the very center of the shawl. So what we'll do is go ahead and grab one piece of yarn, fold it in half, and fold it in half again. Show that once more. So just grab one of the pieces of yarn. These are my 16-inch pieces. Fold that in half once, so that you just have your 2 ends together. And then fold that in half once more, so that you have it quadrupled. So you see 4 strands. 1 loop at the end. Now what we'll do is we'll go in, so this is my bind off edge. I go in to the first stitch here. So I go past the bind off. This is the bind off here. Go past that, and I'm going to go into this hole right here for one of the stitches. So I just put my yarn through that hole, and then I pull it out the other side. And if your lengths get uneven, it's not a big deal. You can go ahead and even those out. All right, so now we have 2 loops on this end here at the top, and we're going to pull the other end through that loop. So where there's a loop and 2 cut ends, pull that through, and I just kind of pull that tight. And you can tighten that as much or as little as you like. I like to tighten it a little bit just to know that it's secure. So there we have completed our first piece of fringe. Completed attaching it. Now I like to go ahead and do the full length, and then I usually hold it up and make sure that I know that I really like it. And then I'll come through and cut this loop for each one. So let's go ahead and do a few more. First, I'll go ahead and show you, this is what it looks like on the right side. So the reason that I like to do it on the wrong side is then I have this nice little bar that I think really polishes off nicely. As you can see on the wrong side, this just isn't quite as nice of a polished look, and so that's why I attach it from the wrong side, so that this is the look on the right side. Alright, so you can attach, of course, your fringe at any interval that you want. You could do it every few stitches, you could measure out inches. I usually count by stitches, just to make sure that I have it symmetrical on both sides. So what I'm going to do here is, if you can see these individual stitches here. So this was one stitch, this is a stitch, so on and so forth. I'm just going to, for right now, I'm just going to go to the next stitch. So right here. So here was the loop for one stitch. There's a hole between those two stitches, and then I'm going to go into the loop for this stitch. So I'm going to pick up the next piece of yarn, fold it in half, fold it in half again, and then again I'm going into that, just that next stitch. Sometimes I'll do every other stitch, sometimes I'll do every third stitch. I think I decided what I wanted for this shawl was every other stitch, but I can always come back through and change that. And as long as I don't cut these ends, it's really easy to modify, to go back and change things. So that's another reason why I don't cut this loop right here, is that then I can make sure that I know I really like the spacing that I've done, all of that. If I decide that I don't like the spacing, you can just, or if you don't like anything about the fringe, just pull these two loops in the front and pull it off, and then you have your starting yarn again. So it's really forgiving in that way. So I'll go ahead and put this into this stitch. So if you wanted to use a crochet hook or something, you could use your crochet hook to push your yarn through and to pull your yarn through, and then when you go through to, oops, I got between the threads of the yarn. There we go. Then to pull your yarn through, you could just pull it through on your crochet hook. And clearly this isn't the way I usually do it, because it's not quite as natural for me. But especially if you're used to crocheting, that's probably a really simple way to do it. But there, I've added my next piece of fringe. So I'll go ahead and do the rest of these here real quick, just that I've cut up to show you what it looks like. And again, this is, you know, like most things in knitting, there's no really right or wrong way to do it. It really doesn't matter how far apart you spread it. It doesn't matter how long it is. If you wanted them even thicker, you could like do your pieces in 32-inch strands and then like fold it over so that you have 8 strands, and then you have a lot fuller pieces of fringe. So just take liberty and play around with it and see what you really like and enjoy. Knitting is all about adding your own style so that you really love your finished project. So I guess where I was going with that was basically just that, like, don't worry too much about everything being perfectly distanced and everything like that. Sometimes, of course, can drive you crazy if you want it perfectly distanced and it's not, so you can try your best, but really I urge you, don't stress over it. I think it's supposed to be fun and enjoyable, and fringe is just another fun thing to do with your knitting. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and add the rest of these pieces of yarn, and I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. Alright, so this shows how far I was able to get with the yarn that I had cut out. Seems like a lot of yarn, but I still have a lot of shawl, and I haven't even started the other half. So, it'll take me a while. Fringe is not a super fast project, but I think it's totally worth it. I absolutely love it, and I will show you the finished product when I'm done. I'll go ahead and show you how I go through and go ahead and clip them all up too. So, I'll be back in a bit. Alright, so here we have the fringe that I did every stitch, and then I have the fringe that I did every other stitch. So this just shows really what the fringe looks like when it's a lot fuller and when it's less dense. Now we'll get to the last step of creating our fringe, and that is cutting the loop at the bottom of the fringe. So it looks like I cut that one there. So here you have one loop at the end of your fringe. So we want to straighten all of those out, pull them straight, and then cut this at the very end so that your strands are all the same length. So we just go through and do that for every single fringe piece that you've added. And then you can see here how that just gives a nice look. Again, your yarn will flatten out with time. This crinkly bit, you could also go ahead and try to block it and see if that helps. But in time, it'll just naturally relax with gravity and everything. So here you can see all the loops here before I cut it, and then it gives it a real nice polished look when you do cut it. And that is how you create fringe. So if you have any questions, go ahead and leave those in the comments down below. If you felt like maybe you missed something, go ahead and replay this video at a slower speed. And if you found the video helpful and informative, go ahead and give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the Snickerdoodle Knits YouTube channel for more knitting tutorials like this. I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you around. Happy knitting!